So I broke my podcast. Not because the interviews weren't good, because they really were, and not because I didn't care. I actually cared too much. In today's episode, I'll break down exactly what went wrong, what I'm doing differently, and how you can implement this. I'm hoping this will save you a whole lot of burnout. Let's get into it. Okay, so what actually went wrong with the Growth Shifters podcast 1.0? I designed it like a long form documentary series, and this isn't an accident actually, because I do have a background in documentary media and in television, and I just love the concept of sitting down and having long, winding conversations with people. But I realized all too quickly that I cannot run that as on a solo engine. I do everything myself. Up until now, I started drowning very quickly. I also had a very kind of step-by-step introduction for guests. I had like pre-interviews and then the actual interviews and then all of this stuff. And I realized I was creating a very high friction interaction for my guests. And I was also creating a very high friction workflow for myself that made it hard to stay focused and engaged and getting things out week after week after week. There was not only the editing and that post-production, I was putting out blogs, I was putting out social media posts, release, trying to, and things were falling through the cracks, and I was not serving my guests to the highest degree that I know I was capable of doing. When you have something like that happening, there's literally no slack in the system at all. It's if one thing goes wrong, if your kid gets sick for a week, if you go away on vacation, if a guest cancels, there's no space to actually regroup. There's no space to actually rebuild or have any kind of buffer or soft landing or backup content or anything that we can put out instead. So it was just a bit of a mess. So, like I said, the problem was not ambition. The problem was designing a program or a show that required perfection to survive. I really was faced last week with a challenge from my mentor, actually, who said, either you have to commit to putting out a show every week or you don't do it. Because if you don't have the consistency of publishing every week, you don't have a show. And I really took that to heart. And I am here rethinking and rebuilding in real time and trying this again. I guess if I was going to put it into one sentence, I am tightening all the bolts. I am streamlining, I'm making it easier. So the first thing I'm doing is shortening the podcast. As much as it in some ways pains me to do that, I am shortening it down so that we only have 20 to 30 minutes tops. It's more manageable for people to take in when they're, out for a walk or commuting to and from work. I don't want something where people feel like I want to listen to this, but I'm going to have to sit for an hour. That kind of commitment is gone. And that also means the commitment for my guests is much lower. They don't have to try to set aside an hour or an hour and a half in their very busy schedules. And it also reduces the work for me, if I'm going to be honest. It's, again, not what I wanted to do, but what I realize must happen in order to make this podcast successful and also to keep the conversations tight so that people stay focused and that we stay on topic and we're not meandering off all over the place. So that is step one. Step two is also for my guests. I am taking back some of those steps that I put in place for onboarding. So we just have one call. We have a little introduction where we talk for 5 or 10 minutes to kind of figure out the direction of the show and set things in motion and record right away. And this accomplishes a couple of things. First of all, it stops my guests from going away and getting nervous. I've noticed that I would have magic in these pre-interviews, but then when people would come back, they'd be like, "Oh my God, I think I'm nervous, or I'm stressed, or I've got something else going on in the background." And I think doing everything at once will help maintain the magic of the moment and hopefully capture that excitement of that initial contact. Also, it does the second thing and it helps me relax because one of the things I was doing is I was over preparing. So I was going away after these pre-interviews and saying like, okay, I've got the idea, I've got the theme, and now I can write out all these questions and I can make sure to say them this way and that way. And and then I was all tight and wound up too in the calls, which wasn't helping my guests, and it certainly wasn't doing my listeners any favors either. And one thing I have done as far as bringing somebody else involved is, I'll be honest, I'm at a position right now where hiring somebody to edit every episode and package it in this nice, professional, sleek, beautiful way is something I'd love to do, but it is not within my budget right now to do it. But I didn't just say no. I got advice saying, you need to leverage other people's expertise. It made me stop and think, well, what could I do that would elevate the show and take some of the load off of me? And the one thing I realized I could do is hire somebody to do a professional intro and outro clips for me. And you've seen them here on this episode. They will be in the episodes going forward. And I'm just really excited and grateful to Finna Charleston, who was my podcast producer for this. And she was amazing. It's a little thing, but it saves me from having to edit voiceovers and everything every time. So all that work is gone. Yes, this is the other thing that really wanted to talk about is I decided to streamline the calls to action at the end because I had this, again, big, beautiful, bold idea of I'm going to do a 3, 2, 1 launch sequence at the end of the episodes where it was, 3 books that people should read, 2 people that we should follow, and 1 action step. And that was a lot. That was a lot. It was fun. I got introduced to some excellent people, but it was putting my guests on the spot. So it just wasn't working the way I had hoped it would. So I have simplified that and just given it as one person to follow and an action step. So it's at maximum 2 things, possibly 1 thing. We've really simplified that ending piece. I really hope that throughout 2026 that I am able to further refine and tweak and solidify what my podcast process is, what it is that I'm delivering to you, and how this is going to serve you, my community, the people who are being very generous and giving their time to tune in and listen or watch the show. I really want to be able to provide maximum value for you, and that is what is driving all of this. And to finish off, I asked my amazing web designer, Christine, to share her top 5 successful podcast tips. She runs a very great podcast called Branding Party, and I'll link to that below. That is my recommendation today for who to follow. She's incredible. And I will just end off with her suggestions.
I would say the top tips that I have for a successful podcast is like getting really clear, perhaps, of what you want the goal or intention to be for your show. Like that's going to help make you different within it. It's going to help keep you motivated to keep consistent with it, to keep showing up for each of these episodes. And I think that's the first step of it as well. And like where you want to guide people to next, because it is a top of funnel piece in your marketing, perhaps as well. Another piece I would say is being able to put yourself, it's such a visibility piece to have a podcast. So I think be able to ask unapologetically for those reviews because it really does help be able to attract more listeners, like help get people the accessible knowledge that you're sharing as well, and to position yourself as an expert and just grow it in a community space globally, which is really exciting. The third piece I would say is find your groove with editing, especially because it can be laborious depending on how minute of detail you get into. I know for myself, like I would go in and try to get out like every at the very beginning of my show because I wanted it pretty like tight and clear. But it just also made me very mindful of how I was speaking as well. So it's just a really growing evolution process of it, but get really clear, I think, of the rhythm and process of your editing so that you get to a point where it feels really natural and clear for yourself of the style that you like. The third or the fourth piece, I should say, then is be able to have a clear structure or foundation for your show notes. So whether that's you want to recycle different call to actions at the end, be able to have, if you want, and have capacity to pull timestamps, for example, so people are really easy to get to specific topics that they're interested in, a little bit about you and your guests when you're collecting the information, if that's the case as well. All these sorts of things to have some structure in there, I think will just make your life a lot easier whenever you're pulling things, whether you're doing a solo episode or a guest episode. And then the fifth piece is just really to have fun with it, because at the end of the day, that's what's going to keep you going throughout this process. It's a lot to put yourself out there. And so it's definitely not for the faint of heart to start a podcast or a show in that way. So kudos to you. Know how far you've come and enjoy the process.
And that really is it in a nutshell. And I'm going to take to heart last suggestion the most because one thing I found that I forgot along the way as I was producing this show is to have fun. It started off as being really fun. I was making all of these amazing connections with people. I was starting to, build that momentum. And then I got bogged down in the work and it felt like, oh my gosh, now I've got to sit down and edit this thing. Oh my gosh, I've got all of this back end stuff that needs to be done in order to get the episodes out into the world. And I just want to really change that balance so that the balance is this is fun for me. This is fun for my guests. This is fun for the listeners. And the work hopefully will be fun as well. So, to close off, I want to thank everybody who has been on the show so far. I will link all the previous episodes below in the show notes so that you can go and see what Growth Shifters 1.0 was about. And I thank you. I hope you're on board and as excited as I am to launch into Growth Shifters Podcast 2.0. Let's go get it.